In Colombia, indigenous organizations warned about a possible massive displacement of Embera indigenous communities in the Cauca Valley. Brazilian civil protection authorities report at least 200 people dead due to the heavy rains and floods in the city of Petrópolis, Rio de Janeiro state. A 14-year-old Palestinian boy was killed by Israeli soldiers in the central West Bank, allegedly after throwing fire bombs at passing Israeli vehicles. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada, and these are the news. In Colombia, indigenous organizations warned about a possible massive displacement of Embera indigenous communities in the Cauca Valley department. The regional indigenous organization, or IVAC, denounced the existence of armed groups in the municipality of Dobio, which has led to limitations in the entry of food into the territory where at least 1,000 families of the Embera people live. Orivac also stressed that the illegal groups have forced the families to remain in their homes and also to obey specified schedule for daily activities. The organization called on human rights defenders and the Ombudsman Office to follow up the facts and also demanded that local and national authorities take measures to protect the native community. We say in Colombia, the systematic violence there against the farmers and social leaders continue. On Tuesday, Teófilo Acuña and Jorge Tafur were assassinated in the Cesar department. The murders will have been perpetrated by two hitchmen in the town hall of Puerto Culto in the San Martin municipality. Teófilo Acuña was a longtime peasant and social leader of the Magdalena Medio region and also a member of the People's Congress and of the National Coordinating Agricultural Board. He dedicated his life to defending the rights of poor agricultural workers, campesino people, and safeguarding territories from paramilitary troops. In December 2020, he was falsely charged and accused and was currently awaiting for trial. Over the last few months, he had denounced persecution and having received threats. The United Nations Special Relator for the Independence of Judges and Lawyers, Diego García Sayán, concluded his visit to Bolivia with a representation of a report that includes 9 essential and preliminary observations on the situation of the justice in the country. The conclusions of the preliminary observations presented by the reporter indicated that justice is far from the people, especially from women and those deprived of their liberty. In addition, other points addressed were the justice for indigenous peoples, the law studies, and the systematic violation of human rights during the coup d'etat of 2019, and the de facto government of Janine Áñez. In this regard, the reporter made special emphasis on the need for victims to relatives to receive justice.
The reality today is more or less the same after some time has elapsed. So, of course, this issue requires permanent attention. I see the situation of the victims as a situation of abandonment, and the need to solve the issues that have emerged. The physical damage, the damage to health, and the loss of life of the 36 people who have died is a matter that must be resolved right away. It is not, as in the other cases, about revenge, but about justice, and that those people they are all from the poorest and most marginalized sectors of Bolivian society, and I perceive and I find that they are not finding justice, and I hope and I invite you to help these families to find justice.
Meanwhile, the Bolivian government ratified its decision to reform the country's judicial system on the occasion of the visit of the United Nations Special Representative Diego García Sayán. President Luis Arce Catacora reported that his government seeks to advance in the transformation of the country's judicial system for the benefit of the people who demand justice. Following Arce's statements, Foreign Minister Rogelio Mayra issued a statement in which he highlighted Bolivia's commitment to international human rights organizations, describing the official's preliminary observations as an important input in the framework of the judicial reform process being carried out. García Sayán met with Arce on Tuesday morning and presented preliminary conclusions of his commission at a press conference. In Mexico, a group of migrants confronted agents of the National Guard in Tapachula on Tuesday afternoon. Around 20 asylum seekers were beaten, according to the director of the organization Pueblos Sin Fronteras, Irineo Mujica. According to reports, the sticks and stones confrontation began because the migrants discovered documents in the rubbish that they had handed in on Monday to speed up their immigration procedures, which could have been the triggering of their anger, who later burned tires, rubbish, and knocked down security fences placed by the law enforcement at the entrance to the migratory office. After the riots, the National Guard and the local police restored the order with repressive measures.
They pushed me and I was carrying my son, pulling me, and I said that I don't throw stones, that I go in peace, that the only thing I want is to solve my family's problems and nothing else.
Cuba is working on a comprehensive policy to provide assistance to children, adolescents, and the youth. University students made the proposal recently in a meeting with government authorities, and its confirmation is underway. To this end, the first secretary of the Communist Party and the president of the Republic, Miguel Díaz-Canel Bermúdez, met with different student organizations at the Palace of the Revolution. According to the head of state, the policy to assist children, adolescents, and young people should focus on 4 fundamental principles: education, employment, family emancipation, and social integration.
Therefore, the educational and training areas are important in this policy. Employment is also an issue we have discussed. The family issue, the housing issue. We have accumulated housing problems, and within the housing policy and what we consider here, there have to be special conditions for young people which have to be different. And we have to change more quickly with young people than with others, because in any Cuban homes there are 3 or 4 generations. I think there are many ways to rent places, small credits that we can give to young people at different times, when they graduate, when they marry, when they have children, and there is a lot of things we could facilitate.
We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back to From the South. Russian President Vladimir Putin delivered a speech to mark the Defender of the Fatherland Day. In his address, the leader of the Eurasian nation denounced the lack of cooperation of Western countries in building reliable security ties.
We can see the difficult international situation and the threats posed by current challenges, such as the erosion of the arms control system and NATO's military activities. And yet, Russia's appeal is to build a system of equal and indivisible security that will reliably defend all countries remain unanswered.
At the same time, Putin emphasized his government's willingness to dialogue while stressing the importance of defending the security of the Russian people.
Our country is always open to a direct and honest dialogue and ready to search for diplomatic solutions to the most complicated issues. But I want to repeat that Russia's interests and the security of our people are an indisputable priority. So we will continue to strengthen and modernize our army and navy, striving to increase their effectiveness so they are fitted out with the most cutting-edge equipment.
On Tuesday, while addressing the Venezuelan people from the Miraflores Palace, President Nicolas Maduro criticized the current actions of NATO and the U.S. over the Ukraine crisis.
The old colonialism of Europe and the new colonialism of the U.S. empire, attacking Russia, attacking China, attacking Iran, threatening Turkey, threatening Latin America, attacking Cuba, Nicaragua, Bolivia, Venezuela. The old colonialism, the old superiority complex of Europe, and the rapacious colonialism represented by NATO, and the new colonialism of the U.S. empire.
During his televised address, President Maduro makes a call to health authorities and also the Venezuelan people to continue with the health program to halt COVID-19 infections by the immunization process, now with the booster jobs.
The most important thing, to speak to the people and to call them attention. Those Venezuelans who had the second dose of the vaccination 4 months ago, go to the vaccination centers to have the booster, and now it will be done every 4 months. I want to be clear, explicit. I want this to be transmitted to the social networks. and to be repeated by thousands in the media, on the radio, in the press, everywhere. Now, the booster vaccination will be every 4 months to keep us well protected.
And Cuba's government has also made declarations concerning the current Ukraine crisis and the attempts to extend NATO's forces to the east. On this note, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has declared that the bloc's expansion constitutes a threat against Russia's national security as well as regional and international peace. Furthermore, the note expresses that the U.S. has been threatening Russia and manipulating the international community about the risks of an invasion of Ukraine. Cuba calls for all diplomatic solution through constructive and respectful dialogue. And China accuses the United States of raising tensions and creating panic over the Ukraine crisis, shortly after Washington announced sanctions against Moscow and said it will continue to supply weapons to Ukraine.
The key question now is, what role has one of the main actors, the US, played during the tense situation in Ukraine? If someone is adding fuel to the fire while blaming others, then that behavior is irresponsible and immoral. On the Ukraine issue, the United States has continued to transfer weapons to Ukraine, raising tensions, creating panic, and even playing out the schedule of war. In sharp contrast, China has always called on all parties to respect and attach importance to each other's legitimacy security concerns, strive to resolve issues through negotiation and consultation, and jointly maintain regional peace and stability.
The Foreign Ministry spokesperson also referred to the ineffectiveness of the sanctions.
Have U.S. sanctions solved these problems? Has the world changed for the better because of U.S. sanctions? Will Ukraine's problems naturally get resolved due to U.S. sanctions against Russia? Will Europe's security become more guaranteed due to U.S. sanctions on Russia? We hope that relevant parties can seriously think about this. I think we should still try to solve the problem through dialogue and negotiation.
Now we move on to other topics. Brazilian civil protection authorities report at least 200 people dead due to heavy rains and floods in the city of Petrópolis, Rio de Janeiro state. Firefighters and volunteers continue to clean up the areas of Petrópolis, most affected areas, in search for victims 8 days after floods wreaked havoc in the city. At this point, the authorities have little hope of finding any survivors. They also warned that the terrain is unstable due to the heaps of mud and debris, so the search for victims is carried out with hand tools and chainsaw in inaccessible areas or those of great risk. Firefighters attempted to contain fires along the Iberian National Park in the Argentine province of Corrientes as flames destroyed more than 9% of the territory. According to the latest official reports, the flames have consumed about 30,000 hectares a day in Corrientes, destroying almost 800,000 hectares so far. Strong winds, low humidity, and dryness from drought have helped the fires spread since mid-January. Authorities estimated losses so far at more than $240 million, and experts said the province could need years to recover. Firefighting units have begun to arrive from all corners of the nation and also from Brazil and Bolivia. Artists and public figures are campaigning to raise funds for the victims, while donations of basic goods are pouring into the area.
The situation is critical. At times, the fire is uncontrollable, but the idea is to work with the local, with our resources and theirs, to show them work techniques, and we'll try to help the province of Corrientes as much as we can. The forecasts are not encouraging. The probability for rain is very low. I think almost 20%. The truth is that it would be the only thing that would help contain all these and put it off as quickly as possible. With periods of drought and floods, I have lived through droughts in my 56 years, but never like this. There has never been anything like this.
One person was found dead in a submerged car and 10 others were reportedly missing on Wednesday after heavy rain caused flash flooding in eastern Australia and set off a string of emergency warnings up and down the Pacific coast. Almost half a meter of rain has fallen on some parts of the state in the last 24 hours, causing multiple road closures and transport chaos. Emergency services received more than 100 calls for help, and swift water rescue crews have been dispatched to assist the dozens of stranded residents. Police warned motorists to avoid driving through flooded roads and to stay at home. After several years of drought and bushfires, Australia's east is wrapping up an extraordinarily wet summer, thanks to La Niña weather pattern. La Niña increases the chances of tropical cyclones off Australia's Pacific coast and brings above average rainfall. Less than 10% of the plastic used across the world is currently being recycled. The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development said on Tuesday, calling for coordinated and global solutions ahead of expected talks on an international plastic treaty. A new report by the organization found that 460 million tons of plastics were used in 2019, nearly doubling since 2000. After taking into account the losses during recycling, only 9% of plastic waste was ultimately recycled, while 19% was incinerated and almost 50% went to sanitary landfills. The remaining 22% was disposed of in uncontrolled dump sites, burned in open pits, or leaked into the environment. The OECD proposed a series of levers to address this issue, including developing the market for recycled plastics, which only represent 6% of the total, largely because they are more expensive. And we have more news coming up after a final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. In Palestine, the Israeli regime forces killed a 14-year-old boy near Bethlehem. The occupying troops opened fire on Palestinian citizens and then prevented the arrival of medical assistance. According to Palestinian authorities, the boy was named Mohammed Siharid, who was shot and wounded during the assault by Israeli soldiers on the West Bank town of Al-Qadr. Israeli soldiers explained that the boy was shot while carrying out anti-terrorist duties and trying to stop 3 people who threw Molotov cocktails at vehicles. The Israeli military considers stone throwing to be life-threatening threats and also which far is unjustified. Interior Minister Bassam Mawalawi announced that Lebanon has hindered a plan by the Islamic State group to carry out 3 bombings during a press conference in the capital.
I will inform you of something today. We have thwarted 3 bombing operations that a terrorist Takfiri radical extremist group's network was planning to carry out on Lebanese soil.
South Africa's finance minister forecasts the economy will grow 4.8%, a revision to the 5.1% growth previously forecast.
We have revised our economic growth estimate for 2021 to 4.8%, from 51% at the time of the tabling of the medium-term budget policy statement. This revision reflects, Madam Speaker, a combination of the impact of changes in the global environment along with our own unique challenges. Commodity prices, which have supported our economic recovery, slowed in the second half of 2021. Also, violent unrest in July and restrictions imposed to manage the 3rd wave of COVID-19 further eroded the gains we made in the first half of the year.
In Somalia, Deputy UN Envoy highlighted the need for urgent humanitarian support for drought-affected communities. During a recent visit, Adam Abdel Mullah, Deputy Special Representative and Resident and Humanitarian Coordinator for Somalia, toured drought-affected areas where he witnessed the effects of the ongoing drought and interacted with displaced families in vulnerable conditions. Abdel Mullah also said that local leaders shared similar views on the need for long-lasting solutions, enhancing the resilience of communities and investing in humanitarian development and peace.
What we need to do is to invest more in the areas of origin of this new displaced communities to ensure that they stay in their areas, and also enhance the social services in the areas that have already seen significant arrivals of people because of the drought.
Now we move on to other topics. South Korea reported over 170,000 COVID-19 cases on Wednesday, setting a new daily record. The number of new COVID-19 cases jumped from nearly 100,000, cases to 171,452 in just one day. South Korea has been seeing an explosive increase in coronavirus cases since mid-January, when Omicron first emerged as the country's dominant strain. In total, South Korea has had just over 2 million cases, with 7,508 deaths, according to data from Johns Hopkins University.
The number of virus cases continues to show an upward trend, but the number of seriously ill patients and deaths are being maintained low. The number of patients in a serious condition is 480 as of today.
And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.